Welcome to the Wall of Fame podcast presented by Avant Media Institute, where we celebrate the alumni who are shaping the audio industry and leaving their mark on the world. Being on the Wall of Fame isn't just about career success. It's about passion, perseverance, and impact. It's a recognition of those who push boundaries, inspire others, and redefine what's possible in music, film, live sound, and beyond. Here at AMI, we believe in the power of creativity and the importance of community. Our Wall of Fame honors graduates who have turned their skills into careers. Whether they're engineering major records, building sounds for films, building their own studios, or pioneering new innovations in audio. Each episode, we sit down with one of our distinguished alumni and hear their stories, how they got started, the challenges they overcame, and the journey along the way. Now, whether you're an aspiring audio engineer, a current student, or just someone who is passionate about the world of sound, this podcast is for you. Today's guest is Alexander Icaza, who attended AMI and graduated with the class of summer 2022. His decision to come here shaped his career and inspired countless of other students to follow in his footsteps. Let's unpack on how he became one of our most influential alumni and a Wall of Fame inductee.
Welcome to AMI.
All right, Xander. Let's get into it. I want to know your story. I want to know what brought you here. I want to know, everything before this conversation. So let's start with what made Avant feel like the right fit for you?
So really what solidified my decision to come to Avant was when I took the tour here. I met Oscar White, who used to be the 101 instructor. And in that tour, I had a lot of questions. But the main thing I wanted to know was, is Avant going to be a direct hands-on experience like what I was looking for? And he answered my questions really well. And at the end of the tour, he really solidified it by showing me some student projects. And I got to see music that students had produced, film projects that students had done ADR for all the audio and Foley. And it really impressed me to see that products of the coursework at Avant were real, tangible pieces of media, versus words on a sheet of paper or, that's all fine too. But what I was looking to create was music. I was looking to produce and to push my skills in engineering, and to see that other students had already done that just coming here, that was what solidified my decision to come to Avant.
I'm glad you say that, because that's what we try to build here as far as the culture, like getting people real, like hands-on experience, getting them straight into it from the moment they walk into 101 to they finish 401. They're getting their hands on it. They're learning at a rapid rate. And I want to ask you this as well. Was there a moment or person at Avant that sealed your decision, or did something almost stop you from taking that leap of faith while you're touring and making your decisions?
Yeah, so I really knew what I wanted going into it, and that was because of my past experience at other colleges. So originally, I actually went to Berklee School of Music in Boston to study guitar performance, and I spent a semester there, and I learned I want to work in music, but this isn't the path that I want to take. So I came back home, reconsidered what my path was going to be, and I ended up deciding to go to UT Austin to study film. And my hope was going to UT that I would be studying there to kind of take the audio side of it. When we're doing projects or whatever, I would be the audio guy and I would be working on all the sound design or whatever. And it was just my path from where I started to where I could start doing that was too long for what I wanted. I was at UT for one semester, and it was also during COVID. So I had a pretty subpar experience in college. They were a very hard lockdown school when it came to COVID stuff. So there was very little socializing or networking that was available to me at the time. I decided that wasn't the path. If I was going to wait till my senior year to do audio stuff, I wanted to look at other options. So when I came to Avant, and it was, you get to work on engineering, you get to improve your skill set right now. You get to have hands-on experience from the first couple months of going there. You get to be in the studio. That was what really drew me in. Especially, I had self-studied before. I just wanted to work with professionals, people who had made it in the industry, have them be able to take me where I wanted to go. And that was so I knew there was nothing really holding me back. Once I knew what Avant was about, I was pretty much sold on it.
Yeah, we try to get right to it here. Now let's talk a little bit before Avant. So what sparked your love for audio? Was there a song, album, or an experience, or a combination of a few? What started that in the first place?
So I've always loved music from when I was really young, but it was a pretty slow burn getting into it. I started playing guitar when I was 9, and I kind of hated it at first.
Yeah.
I did those like forced, really uncomfortable recitals, and I didn't really practice, and I didn't care, but I still had a love for music.
Yeah.
So that persisted, and when I was a little bit older and I still had my instruments available to me, I decided to go all in and really start learning. And I learned all the stuff that normal guitar players learn early on, like Metallica, and I wanted to learn, Through the Fire and Flames, and all these like hard guitar songs really appealed to me. Shred guitar was just the coolest thing in the world to like a 14-year-old Xander. So that was what got me into music, and from there it was just looking for opportunities to play. Once I started getting my skills up to where I wanted to show them off, I looked for bands, and I started joining just local projects wherever I could. I went to a school of rock for a little while where I ended up meeting a lot of my future bandmates.
Nice.
And so it was a slow burn, but it was playing an instrument, playing guitar, that really got me into music. And from there, just everything, all of my interests kind of blossomed out of that, including engineering. I mean, I started in engineering because my band wanted to record music, and we were flat broke. I mean, we had nothing, so we pulled together what we had, which was this cheap PreSonus audio interface, and my friend had some KRKs, and we, threw together what we could, and it was terrible. But, that was the start, and that was the start of going, I want to get better at this. This is where I want to focus in. I was pretty good at guitar at that point, so I really just wanted to focus on the areas where I would get the most return on my time investment.
Yeah. So Dan, let's talk about that, because we all have that before we either go to school or really just jump into it. We have those like, and I always say it's the most fun you ever have, like making music. It's never the best, as far as like your talent and skill set, but it's the most fun because it's something new. What were some of those early experiences, like experimenting with audio before you like went to school? Tell me a bit about that. What was that like?
Yeah, so when I first started, it was pretty much garage band level recordings and just working out of our living rooms. We didn't know anything about it, but what I started doing was I started looking into what producers and what engineers made my favorite music, and I started finding courses and stuff that they had done online, and that was where my self-study started. From there, it was just kind of a natural progression to learning, getting better, starting by just copying what they're doing. And when I came here, it was really learning what they were doing, how it was affecting the sound, and more of how to do it my way. But before that, I mean, we would just kind of write music in a room all together. And it was all, I mean, there was no engineering to it. We were all just took the mantle of musicians. And eventually we started sophisticating our approach over time. Everything just developed with us as we aged and as we gained more experience. To this day, we produce a lot of our music in this program called Guitar Pro, where we can write something on our instrument, tab it out, like write it out in music notation, and then we can send a file to one of our other bandmates, and they can edit it and send it back. And so that was something that we did a lot before I knew anything about production and before I knew anything about engineering. That was kind of my first step in production, was just working in Guitar Pro, writing down stuff that I knew how to play on guitar. And the files are super small. They're kilobytes. So I just sent them off to my bandmates, and they'd edit it or change it or add their own parts, and it would be a very collaborative effort. We still do that, even though every member of my band now today lives in different cities. we still get the opportunity to work on music and send stuff back and forth. So that's pretty cool, and that's something that stuck around from when I was just starting. But it's pretty much been the same as far as our approach to production.
Okay.
The main thing that's changed is just our approaches in engineering as we grow in the engineering field.
Now you're like shaping the sonics. So now I hear you say, like, you've had like band members or like a network of people that were into it, like that were growing as engineers, as producers, as players, which is important because in this industry we don't always get a lot of people that understand what we do.
Yeah.
So it's important to have people that are kind of there to keep us on track, keep us focused, because this is a very, very tough industry to be successful in. I'm sure you know. So I want to ask you, was there any like mentors or figures that encouraged you and helped shape your confidence along the way? Tell me a bit about some of those people.
Yeah, so one of the first people that I met that had the same interest when it came to engineering from that standpoint was my buddy Coleman, who's he's now an Avant graduate. We met through one of his bandmates.
Okay.
My first job that I had was I was a repair technician at Guitar Center.
Okay.
So I used to work on guitars for a living, and I heard this guy playing bass, and when you work at Guitar Center, you're not used to people like playing actual music. You're kind of used to the kids plinking out Master of Puppets on the clean channel for some reason, or Stairway to Heaven, or whatever, or just junk, that people are just noodling around on their instruments. I heard this guy playing bass, and it's even rarer to hear a good bass player there than a good guitar player. So I knew I had to talk to him, and he was my age. His name was Aiden. Great guy. And he ended up connecting me to his band. He was in a band with my buddy Coleman. Okay. I met Coleman one-on-one for the first time, and it blew my mind to meet somebody who was as passionate as I was, who was as driven as I was, somebody who had nothing. I mean, he started with pretty much even less than we did, because we had 4 people in our band. Everybody had a little bit of something. We pulled all our stuff together. And then I got the job at Guitar Center, and I used my employee discount. I bought so much gear when I worked there. Pretty much every cent I made from that job. I'm not known for my great financial decision making. And so, I mean, everything that I did at the time went back into engineering, back into more equipment for my studio. And I met him, and mentally we're on the same level, but he is doing things at the same level as I am with half the equipment I had. And so that really drove me to be better, and he saw what I was doing, and that made him want to improve. And so we started sharing ideas and producing together. And so he was really a big figure in my getting into audio. I mean, we met pre my time at Avant. Okay. So that was something that really drove me to want to get better.
That's pretty cool. So I'm learning a bit about you and one of my former students in Coleman's.
Yeah.
I already respect him and got love for him. Now I have even more just to hear a little bit about his backstory.
Oh yeah, he's come a long way, just like I have.
And it's good that you have each other to kind of like push each other to get better and kind of keep each other on the right path. That's really important. Now let's talk about your early days at Avant. Let's get into that. Tell me about your first week, and were you surprised about the program or the culture compared to what you expected? What was that like?
So I came from a very rock background, which isn't as common to see here, although there are a lot of students now, especially since I've graduated, who are into like rock and more like traditional band style music.
It's very diverse here. Absolutely.
But when I was here, a lot of people were really into like hip hop production, trap, that kind of stuff. There was some like EDM, future bass guys, like
nice.
And that was all stuff I've never touched. And the longer I've been doing this, the more appreciation I have for it, and the more love I've developed for those genres over time. But going into Avant, I really didn't have exposure to that as much as I did once I started coming here. So my classmates, shout them out real quick. I had Bea, Avery, AR, and Chico were my 4 classmates.
Right on.
And they were all super passionate about what they did. and they all kind of hailed from different areas, but same overarching genres of working in hip hop, working in R&B, these kind of genres that overlap a lot.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of influence that came from them and their passion and just seeing what they were working on when I first started there. And it was great to have a class of people that we all connected really well, despite our different backgrounds and despite being from different places and being different ages even. We all really meshed together well as a class. And
that's what music's all about. It brings us together. That's pretty cool. Now, let's talk about some of the instructors, because I know for me, there's a few. When I went to school, I went to HCC, and there's one that stands out. His name is Chris Longwood. He's also my mastering engineer. We went from, he was my instructor, I went to his wedding. So it's we have those instructors that kind of make a everlasting impression. So was there an instructor or class that completely changed how you thought about sound? And what's the lesson you still use daily?
Yeah, so when I came to Avant, I was really impressed with Oscar at first, and I really loved his class.
Absolutely.
And he has great stories. I mean, just really, really funny stories even of just his experience as an engineer.
Yeah.
He had some wild sessions. But what really surprised me was how every single class that I took here, I got tons out of it. I mean, in 201, I had Maestro. I also had Mark Zamora, who's a business partner of mine. He is the manager at Lucky Run, and he's the founder of Hive Studios. He is a great engineer, great businessman, and so I learned a lot from him at his time there. And I've worked with him on projects at Lucky Run. He rents out his space, and I've worked on a couple albums there. Every instructor that I've had, whether it's 101, 201, 301, I mean, anybody, they met me at my level for that class. Yeah. So, and that was something, everybody who's here is a working professional in the industry. And so when I came into a class like 301, I have a ton of experience and a ton of background in music theory. I might have been able to even teach that class, which might be saying a lot. But it was, I got 104 in 301.
Nice.
As my final grade. So that class was really easy, but the thing that really kept me going and kept me driven was the fact that Tina, who was my instructor at the time, she met me at my level, and we were able to hash out music theory and talk about production, and she had a lot of experience in producing EDM, and I didn't really at all. So we had just a lot of things that I needed to learn about that were outside the scope of the class, that she was able to meet me at my level and still answer my questions and still give really great, DJing. She's a great DJ, and I know almost nothing about it. So there were angles that kept me interested in every class that I did, because the instructors were able to, whether I was new to it, like music business or live sound, or I was really experienced in it or moderately experienced in it, every instructor that I had met me at my level. So, and that was something that was really awesome to me while I was here.
And it's really cool that you mentioned being around a lot of people with different areas of expertise as far as what genres they work in. Because I feel at least for me, when I look at I always try to find what are some things I could pass on to my students as far as what am I seeing that is being popular, as far as methods or ideas that are being shared. What are some I can take, and what are some that are absolutely wrong? And one thing I hear that I think kind of limits young creators, they'll tell people, get good at one thing. Don't try to be good at everything. And someone like you, who I feel would be a testament to it, I always say that, kind of on the other end, get good at making music, because then every genre has tendencies and kind of rules that you can fall into, and if you can understand those, you can work in any other genre, and it just makes you more valuable.
I completely agree. I mean, so there's this thing called the diminishing point of return, and at a certain point, when you put so much time and so much effort into a skill, eventually you'll get good enough at it that the same amount of time, you're not going to get the same level of return. And there comes to a point where you're at the top levels of technique on an instrument, or the top levels of engineering and being able to take new gigs or learn new consoles, or, you know, and those are all great things and amazing skills to have. When you reach that point, you really have to ask yourself, am I going to put in months and months of my time to get 2% better, or am I going to use that time to really get a lot better at a skill that I know nothing about? And I think that that's what ended up making me go away from Berklee, because I was good enough to get in, and I did decently in my ensembles. But what I was really asking myself was, I'm putting tons of effort in, and I'm not getting a lot of return. And I could take 4 years there, and I'd probably be a lot better than I even am today. Or I can start working on other skills that I'm not good at all. You know, it's just a question of going all in versus diversifying your skill set. You know, there's the old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. There's a second part to it that a lot of people don't say.
Let's hear it.
Jack of all trades, master of none, but better than a master of one.
There we
that's
go.
The full,
that's a bar right there,
that's
man.
the full saying. So that's something that a lot of people leave out. I would prefer to be a jack of all trades than a master of one. I agree with that.
And also too, like when it comes to, let's just like talk like production, like sounds fade. So if you get good at making one sound, and that, like, I'd imagine there's some like hip hop producer in the 2000s, like, man, this boom bap stuff's never going away, right? And like, this stuff's like you don't see it as much, and all the work that they could have been if they would have just adapted to different sounds, and even outside of rap, like subgenres within, they're limiting themselves, and when that time fades, so has your skill set. So really glad that you had the approach to, you know, even if you're around people that don't necessarily like the same or don't work comfortably in the same genre that you do, that you're open to learning more about what they do, and you guys can share information, and that way there's some stuff about like rock that they can incorporate into there that they're learning from you, and vice versa. There's some stuff from like, you know, hip hop or R&B that you're able to incorporate into what you do, so that's really cool.
It's all about collaboration, man.
Absolutely, man. Let's talk about some of the projects here, because we have a lot of like labs projects that really, at least I can speak for 301 since I know them like the back of my hand.
Right.
They just, you know, as the labs go on, you're just building on skill sets eventually till the final, you just make a beat from scratch, right? But let's talk about some of the projects here. Was there one, because I know as all like engineers, producers, we all have this moment. Was there a project or lab where you're like, that made you realize, I can do this, I can excel in this field? What was that like for you?
So I think it was something that I realized across the course of my time here, which was primarily reinforced by our field trips that we did. You know, every class goes to studios at some point during the tenure of the class, and it was going to studios and actually having hands-on experience and going and producing a session or you know, making a song on the spot, and just seeing the process and seeing how you know, we can do it as a class made me feel a lot better about doing it myself. And a lot of it was stuff I was familiar with, but it was revisiting studios and revisiting production that made me go, I'm a lot better at this now than I was when I first started here. You know, that was what made me start realizing that. Also, just working with the instructors, working with people who are audio professionals, and seeing that they're human, you know, they're people like the rest of us. They're knowledgeable and highly skilled people, but that's what, you know, that's why you go to Avant. You go to Avant to learn their perspectives and their process and how they got to where they are. I think it's important, you know, to some extent you have to follow the path and do what the people who are successful are doing. You know, you don't have to copy them, but there are certain elements that you can take away from everybody who's made it and go, what can I do that will help me get to this level versus what they're doing? How different is my approach versus theirs? You know?
And I love that you say professionals, because I think we're like, at least for like what we try to build here is, we're going to teach you everything you need to know to build a foundation. Now, after that, you know, that comes with practice and, you know, trial and error and just, you know, just absorbing more information. But what we really try to do is teach people how to become professionals, and not just like someone who has a skill set and can do. How are we able to turn this from a hobby into a job? So I love that you use the word professionals, because that's what we try to build as audio professionals. And speaking of being professional, let's talk about post-graduation now. Take us back to your first major project after graduation. How did you land that opportunity, and what skills became your secret weapon moving forward?
Yeah, so my first major project I did was an album with an artist named Max Diaz called Metanoia. And we didn't know the name of the album when we first started working on it, but it started with just, I was going to a lot of live shows. It was actually a show that my friend Aiden, he was in another band. They've broken up since, but they were called Tracing Paces. He was filling in for their bass player. I went out to go support him because he's my guy. And Max Diaz happened to be there. And it's really funny because we ran into each other a lot. We ran into each other when he needed his guitar fixed when I work at Guitar Center. We ran into each other when I was doing a session at Lucky Run. Is one of my field trips. Actually, in 101, Max Diaz was the session artist in one of our field trips. And we saw each other and we went, hey, he went, you're my guitar guy. I went, well, today I'm your engineer. You know, so he happened to be at that show. And, you know, we just got to hang out together. And after the show, everything was kind of winding down, and he was talking about, man, what do you know about recording live drums? Because I really want live drums on my next project that I do. And I go, you know what? I'm your guy. Like, let's start working together. I'll give you, you know, here's my intro fee. Let's get a session. And I was really excited about working with him because I love the stuff that he come out with. I saw the passion behind it, and I saw where he was versus where he needed to be. And so that was something I already knew the line for where I wanted to take him going into the project. So our first studio session went off without a hitch, and it, you know, at the end of the day, we had a pretty great song, and he was really happy with it. He went, okay, I want to work with you some more. So
there you go.
It evolved from one song to me doing his full album, and not just engineering it or just recording it, but I mean, I produced it. We designed sounds from scratch. I performed on it. I played bass on some tracks, guitar on some tracks. We did everything together. It was a super, super collaborative process. And so that was where I got that connection, was just, and I think that's something that a lot of engineers might underrate. If you want to grab people to work with, go find your local music scene and go take mental notes. What bands are good? What bands have promise or have potential? Or, you know, what sounds can you push to the next level? A lot of my clients have just been from going to little mini festivals happening at Numbers Nightclub where there's 12 bands playing. And of those 12 bands, there might be one that's worth working with. But a lot of times, if you're a skilled engineer, you have background, you have a portfolio, they're going to be stoked that you want to work with them, because a lot of people are struggling trying to do it on their own. And a lot of people take that approach because they see other bands doing it on their own. But a lot of times these are full-time bands. One of their members might have been an engineer for a really long time, or, you know, it's hard to do it on your own.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a little bit overrated not working with somebody, because I've seen a lot of bands make two mistakes when it comes to people that they select to work with. And I think one of them is choosing to work with somebody who's not all in to this field. You know, they might be working with Steve the accountant, who does audio on the side and kind of has his garage studio, and he might have some nice equipment because he makes a lot from his job, but how much is he going to know how to use that? How creative is he going to be when his 9 to 5 is taking up most of his mental space, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's not to say that he's a bad engineer, but it's to say, is that what you want as a band that's trying to go all in? You want somebody who's going to go all in with you. So sometimes doing it themselves can be a mistake, and sometimes just picking somebody who's not gone all in, who's not in this as a full career. I think that those can both be, if they really want to take their music to the next level, that's my position. And when you come to them from that position, you have a lot of draw. You have a lot of strength in your position with that band on a networking standpoint. And I actually have been told yes more than I've been told no when I do go out and work with bands. Probably about the same. I'm probably 50-50.
That's good.
But, you know, and even if it's just one project, getting your foot in the door is the first step to potentially making a lifelong client. So that's my approach when it came to post-graduation, finding new clients and working with people. Actually, every stable job I've ever had in audio has been because of my connections at Avant.
Nice.
I've worked in live sound a lot too, and I've used my skills with my clients, but I also have gotten some jobs because of it. I used to work for Star Sound. I was kind of their flex spot. I did a lot of backline. I did a lot of warehouse work, and it was just kind of working my way up, being in these fields and in these big arenas because they did big shows. I mean, you know, I spent time there to learn more about the live sound industry, and now I'm working at a higher level with other companies and other people. I work with a company called Sky God Productions, owner is Steve Curry, and we do really awesome shows, you know, from scratch, bottom up. And I also work broadcast from a connection that I got through Avant for a church called Spring Baptist as a broadcast engineer. And something that I found really valuable is the steady income. Because from an engineering standpoint, a lot of times, you know, it can be feast or famine, where you you get a ton of projects in 1 month, and then the next month you're dry, and you get a ton of projects in the next month, or, you know, sometimes it can be longer periods of feast or longer periods of famine. And the economy matters because if people have money in their pockets, they feel better about spending it. Yeah. But having just a steady income, even if it's not major, you know, I'm only part-time because I do this. I am full-time. I work part-time as broadcast. I spend all the rest of my time producing, working with bands, making music, you know. And that's been honestly just a huge blessing for me in my career path. And I've got all my connections through Avant for those steady positions that I've had.
Now, through these jobs, we mentioned just a second ago about secret weapons. Have you found any yet? So, for example, like I work with an artist who, let's just say he's not allowed to record where he's at. Yeah. But he found ways to record. And it's through this tiny, like, 4-track recorder, right? Yeah. And so when we get these recordings back, it's not just him. There's sounds of other people in the recordings. There's sounds of people screaming. There's sounds of, like, if there's fans going off, like all the hum and buzz from that. I got really good at repairing those recordings to sound as close to a studio vocals we can get, to the point where I was using RX by Isotope. To the point where I met the reps from Isotope, and they were, like, blown away that their software can do that. Yeah. Have you developed any of those? 'Cause it sounds like you've had a lot of jobs in this industry that I'm sure you have to think of stuff or figure stuff out on the fly, or, you know, a lot of problem solving. Have you gotten any of those secret weapons from any of that just yet?
Yeah, so I have a few tools in my arsenal that I definitely use. I don't think anything about that super special or unique to me specifically, but there are certain things that I use that maybe not everybody else uses. RX is a great program, by the way. It is. It is really powerful. It is. But for what I use in my productions, something I actually have used a lot is the Kilohertz free plugin suite. Okay. That is a great just utility audio tools. If you need a limiter, you have a limiter with 0 latency. Nice. If you need and that's what I use on my broadcast. I used to use L1, but I didn't like what L1 does with the audio when you start to drive it. And as a mastering limiter, it just didn't work for my needs. And I found the free Kilohertz limiter is a cleaner sounding, you know, lower latency tool for broadcast. So, and they have I use their transient designer all the time. And a lot of their other plugins, I have alternatives because I have a big suite I built up over the years. But if I didn't have that, man, if I'm just on somebody else's computer and I need to go, I need this set of tools right now, I know I can go on their website, download their plugin suite, and have all kinds of stuff available to me. That's all really simple and really high quality.
Okay.
And whoever's using the computer is probably not going to be mad about it because it's a small download and it's useful, if they're producing. So that's one thing that I use a lot that I haven't seen a lot of other people use.
That's cool.
I'm on Melodyne and Vocaline and all that kind of stuff that other producers use, but I feel like that's pretty industry standard tool. So I don't know if I call them a secret weapon.
I mean, you'll be surprised at how many people don't want to learn the stuff that you've learned before and while you were here to make Melodyne useful.
Yeah.
There's a lot of engineers who they think of, let's say they've been in engineering for 15, 20 years, right? And they see the progress it took from year 1 to year 20. And they're thinking in order to get to that, let's say with music theory, because that's what helps with Melodyne, right?
Yeah.
If they need to take that same amount, they're like, man, I already spent 20 years. I got to spend another 10 to 20 to get good at this stuff. And it's intimidating.
Yeah.
Especially if you've spent you're older, you feel like, I've learned all I want to learn at this point in your life. So some people, you'll be surprised how intimidated they get by learning something like scales, where Melodyne is. That's what helps you figure it out. So
right.
You saying that, I mean, it definitely is a tool because a lot of people steer away from it, especially the people I've been around. A lot of people are afraid to just dive into it.
Well, and even Maestro did a Melodyne masterclass here that I attended, and there's some crazy things you can do with it.
Oh yeah.
He was talking about in some of his productions, he'll actually use it, duplicate the vocals, and he'll make harmonies in Melodyne. The vocalist never sang, but it sounds pretty on to what it would sound like if they actually recorded those vocals and those harmonies. And he does it all in Melodyne, so that was pretty mind blowing. So I would call that a secret weapon. That is definitely something that I bet most people would not do.
Now speaking of tools, tools and trends change all the time, right? How do you blend the fundamentals you learned here with today's tech or workflow?
Yeah, so I just try to stay current. I use a lot of tools that I see other producers using, and I stay pretty up to date when something else comes out or there's a lot of hype in our world about it. I find out about it, and then I try to figure out, is this worth adding to my tool set, or is it just a fad? Because some things are fads and some things are, can end up being lifelong tools. So, my favorite EQ is FabFilter. When Pro Q4 dropped, which was just a month or two ago, it was not a question of upgrading for me. I knew I had to upgrade it, and it was just the expanded tool set that was available, especially the spectral EQ was a big thing for me. So there are definitely some benefits of just keeping up to date in the industry, seeing what tools drop. Another really big one that dropped a couple years ago now, I think, is Soothe 2.
Yeah.
That is something that a lot of producers, a lot of engineers have been using to get their sound. I think Soothe is very powerful. I think it's a little too powerful. Yeah. Sometimes you can use it too much and it can suck the life out of whatever source you're putting it on, but I think that, you just have to be aware of that. You have to use your ears to kind of understand how to use the tools that you're given and how to use the tools that are in the industry and to objectively look at what you're doing to the audio. Like Soothe is a great program, but I try to limit my usage of it because I know that it's also capable of doing things like that, like pulling out a lot of the life in your sound. And sometimes a little bit of harshness in a sound is what makes it sound loud, or a little bit of harshness in your sound can make it exciting. So it's you just have to balance your knowledge of audio and your knowledge as a producer with the tools that you have available to you. And that's where your sound comes from. I mean, it's how you use. Everybody has access to the same stuff. You give a kid $5,000 and he can have all the plugins that all the best producers have, and so it's just about using it. It's about knowing how to objectively look at what you're doing and being able to analyze, is this what I want out of this, out of this sound or this tool or this plugin or whatever it is,
Yeah. And that's why I say it's important for someone to invest in some type of education, whether it's like Avant, or whether it's something like, you know, you're just like constantly pouring in like hours into studying, because with the tools today, they make it so easy where it almost does it for you. But like it also like to your point, knowing what's going on, knowing what each thing does, it's the support, like whether it's a knob or a fader that's supposed to make things certain easy, knowing how that works definitely helps you out, at least to you know, get a good understanding of it, so you're just better off for it. But let's talk about like now we've already, you know, covered your post graduation a little bit. Let's talk about success in the industry, because you seem to have within a couple years turned this into a full-time job, which is hats off. Just want to congratulate you on that.
Thank
it
you.
takes a lot of people a long time to do that. So what's a myth about success in the industry you want to debunk for aspiring students?
Yeah, I think one big myth is that it's all luck. You know, there is an element of luck to this, and there's an element of luck to finding the right client. It's hard to find the right clients because you're looking at 3 really difficult factors that almost nobody has all of, which is you got to have somebody who has money. Typically, you want somebody, I mean, you want to work with somebody who has skill. We don't always get that opportunity, but you want somebody who's highly skilled. And then you want somebody who has both of those things, and then they want to work with you over somebody else. So it's hard. It can be hard to find all of that. But man, you just have to, sometimes you just have to put your head down and just grind and go to these shows and make these connections and talk to people. It's a very social job. I know there's a lot of, you know, like bedroom producer kind of draw to this job and this industry, because there is a huge element of just being able to do it on your own. But I think that's where the luck comes in. If you really try to network and you try to pull, you know, this is actually a quote from Skrillex, who stole it from somebody else. But success is not something that you obtain, it's something that you attract. It's really, you want to bring in people who are successful at what they're doing and share, you know, your skill set with them, your abilities with them, and really just try to bring in this network of people that can help you succeed. And I think there's not a lot of luck that comes to that. There's a lot of personableness. There's a lot of being able to connect with people and being able to network. And it can be hard if you don't live in a big city. You know, we live in Houston, so there are a lot of opportunities here for that, especially, I mean, if you're a hip-hop producer, rap producer, there's a ton of stuff here. But even in my genres, I mean, there's a huge underground scene here. So it's just about putting your nose down and really and working hard and having a skill set and an image to back your claims. And if you have that, it's going to be really hard for you to not pull in new work.
And you say the word network quite a bit, and I'm glad you say that, because when I talk to my students about networking, we kind of, I try to establish what prevents some of us from networking. And a lot of answers I hear is people are too introverted, they're too shy, they're too afraid, especially of rejection. Was that something that you had to hurdle over yourself? And if so, how did you overcome those things?
Yeah, I mean, rejection's a big part of it, and I have been rejected by people. Sometimes, a lot of times it's price. You know, not every band in Houston is a lot of money to work with, and it's expensive working. If you are doing this as full time, you got to charge a good amount of money. And when especially if it's just one person paying that, it can be really hard. I have the advantage of working with bands, so it can be a little bit lighter. They can split the cost. I'm still one guy, so but it's a big part of it, and you just have to not take it personally, and you have to just do it. I mean, it's the same thing with, I struggle with songwriting sometimes and with production, because I love writing and I always have ideas in my head, and sometimes I sit down and I've been feeling passionate all day, and I sit down and I have every tool available to me that I need, and I just give up. You know, I try to do something for 30 minutes and I give up. But then I see how other people produce, especially people who make music for a living. And I mean, they sit there for hours just hashing out ideas, going through different sounds. And so where networking is something that comes more naturally to me, because I'm able to just kind of push through those awkward social interactions and just try to put my best foot forward. Somewhere where I might struggle is actually kind of the bedroom producer side of being able to just sit there and hash out ideas for hours upon hours. So, everybody has their struggles.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to push through and sometimes put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable or that suck. It does get easier the more you do it. So
yeah, I always tell my students have a sort of a script that they can fall back on when networking, like stuff that you can ask, general questions you can ask anybody.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we are around a lot of introverted people who don't like to converse with people they don't know. So how to get them out of their shell a little bit, and then have questions in the tuck. That way, in case it does get awkward, you can find like natural ways to get out of the conversation. So it's good that you're doing that. It's good that you're preaching like networking. That's how you build your one, not only your clientele, but all your opportunities came from networking. So that's good that you say that. Let's talk about being on the Wall of Fame now.
Okay,
a very exclusive list, might I add. So being inducted into the Wall of Fame is a full circle moment for you. What does this honor mean to you?
Well, first off, it's just great to be back at AMI. It's been a while since I've been here because I do so much work in outside studios, but Avant has really great faculty and they have really great equipment here. So, I've had a lot of great opportunities that some other people might not have had to work in other places, but it's awesome to just be back here, see my old school again and all these old, like these familiar faces. And it's a good feeling to know that Avant cares about their alumni, like people like me, that you guys are still reaching out to me. I'm still feeling the impact of my time at the school.
That's great.
So it's just a warm, fuzzy feeling, really, like just getting to be back here and seeing everybody again was really nice. So that it means a lot to me that you guys still show that you care.
I mean, that's what we all the faculty and staff in general, but as far as like specifically the instructors, what we try to do is like be a lifelong lifeline for you guys. So if you ever need anything, or we like to throw you guys gigs here and there, because we also know what it's like. Like at least for me, I can speak for me, and I'm sure that all the others feel the same. We weren't always around people who wanted to help, and we were around some people who did. Yeah. We remember the ones who did more than we want the ones that didn't, right? So we always try to to get off we want to be the people that you remember that wanted to help instead of the people who didn't care to. So I'm glad you say that, because it's really what we try to do here is be someone that you guys can always lean on. You guys can always, reach out to if you had any questions. Yeah. So I'm glad you get to come back and see some of the upgrades here. Yeah. So we have this place is even from the time I started, which is a little after you graduated till now. It's like there's a few things in here. That totally changed.
There's a whole studio here that wasn't there before. So it is really cool to see how Avant has grown too.
Now, for future engineers, what is your final message to someone debating pursuing a career in audio engineering?
Yeah. So to anybody who is looking into going in this field, you got to love it, period. I mean, it has to be your passion. It has to be something you want. You don't do it for money, don't do it for fame. There is a lot of people who are in it, who are doing it, that they will never achieve these super high levels of income or these super high levels of fame, and they might try and try and try, and that's not what it's about. It's about passion, it's about creation, it's about just making something that wasn't there before and getting your ideas and sharing them with the world, or translating other people's ideas and sharing them with the world. So if you don't love it, don't do it.
No, absolutely.
But,
absolutely.
It's it can be harsh, but that is, there is a huge difference to me between people who really go all in and do it out of pure passion and decide that this is where they want to be for the rest of their life. And then there is another level of, it's kind of a hobby. And that's fine. Hobbyism in this industry is a fine thing. If you have the money to build yourself a studio, you've got another job, that's totally fine. But if you really want it and you want to perform at the level of the people that you look up to most of the time, you got to go all in.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go all in, you have to love it. Like, that's
Absolutely.
it. So beyond that, once you get there and once you're starting to produce stuff that you're happy with, and once you're starting to get there, I really want to encourage engineers to start branching out like we talked about earlier. Just start learning skills that can help you push your game to the next level. And sometimes it can be as simple as, you're working with drums a lot. Learn how to tune a drum kit. Learn the difference between different kinds of drum heads and different shells. Aluminum hoops versus stainless steel hoops. Like, that all matters in drum production. And so if you're going to do that and you know that you're working with that, just push, just keep learning. I'm in the middle of learning lighting programs and video because I work for a church, and that's a huge part of it. Being able to do staging for live productions. I mean, there's so many things you can learn. And like I said, once you get to that point of diminishing returns, you can still push your skills in audio engineering, but you can do that while you're getting a lot better at something else versus just pushing really hard here. You're only going this far. But if you push this other skill really far, it might take your engineering skills, to the next level. Source is everything. So, but yeah, just be passionate and keep pushing. Just never stop learning. It's a continual learning process. I'm still learning. I'm just getting started, man.
So I cannot wait for this to come out because we're getting some good clips out of this. Because one thing I preach to my students is, I said it a little while ago, creating as much value for yourself as possible. And what I kind of like push with that is, like, there may be things you don't know, and if you take the time to learn them, there can be the difference between you being like, if you're interning at a spot and there's 3 interns and you're the only one that knows this one thing, you may not be the best engineer in the room, but since you know this one thing, well, now you're being called up to do this one thing. Like for me, so I manage live from the Pentagon, and we just opened up a new location. And so, like, interns like say, hey, I don't like tuning. It's just so time consuming, and like, if I can pass stuff to you guys, cool. So like, we teach them, all right, learn how to do this one thing. So you're more valuable, right? And I love that you keep sharing that, because that's what we try to preach here. Like, become as valuable because now you're getting opportunity after opportunity because of your value. So.
And I mean, even just recently, I had an opportunity because of my skill set to go work at Metro, which is this really big Southern Baptist conference. It is probably the largest conference for Southern Baptist churches. And it is all the worship pastors from all the largest Baptist churches in America all meet at one place. I mean, and to go there, you have to have, I think it's 1,000 or 1,500 attendance at your church minimum. So it's a really big conference. They had some really big names in worship music, like Shane and Charity Gale. And I had the opportunity to go and work there and network with really big names and really big people because of my diversity and my skill set. The person who brought me on, he said, I'm picking you because if somebody's guitar breaks, you can fix it. If, we need somebody to do backline or set up the stage, all about backline. If the monitors engineer guy doesn't show up, if the front of house engineer guy doesn't show up, I know that I can count on you to fill in any spot that we could need from a media standpoint at this conference. And so, that it has a lot of value. And that is something that I definitely take a little bit of pride in, being able to be that flex slot and be able to take all these jobs, because you never know what needs you might have. And sometimes a broken string, like being able to fix that quickly, can be the difference between a short pause in a session or ending that session for the day.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on, sharing your story. From the 2 hours maybe that I've gotten to know you today, I'm really inspired by your story. I just want to thank you for reminding us that the right choice isn't always the obvious one. And it's the one that fuels your unique voice. So I want to congratulate you again on your induction. And I cannot wait to hear from you moving forward and see what you do with this career, man.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, and thank you to AMI for having me out here.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, you're more than welcome to come back.
Yeah, sounds great.
Welcome to AMI. Welcome to AMI. Welcome to AMI.